Hey, I'm Lilat R, and this is my submission for SGDQ 2022 for Star Fox 64. Run starts on first input, and go. So I'll explain the screaming in a second, but the category that we're submitting here is called 2K%, and it's submitted as both a race and a co-op with Rakanai and I, which are two separate categories, obviously, because you can't do both. There are a number of donation incentives that we have for this, including Kill Slippy, which was very successful during my SGDQ 2019 run. One of the, very, very quickly met. What's going on now, called Scream Fox, as well as a 2-player 1 controller for Andross for the co-op run, which is actually surprisingly difficult, as you might imagine, for a 2-player 1 controller, as it usually is. So what's going on right now is called Scream Fox. This is a mod of the game made by the community, which basically replaces a lot of the characters' dialogues with screaming. As I said, this is a donation incentive, not at all required for the game. So if you find it annoying, we can just get rid of it. The category itself is called 2K%. So what that is getting 2,000 points and finishing the game as quickly as possible. It was inspired by some old SRL races of 1,000 points, where they basically just got 1,000 points and insta-stopped. And we were kind of thinking, well, you know, we could actually get 2,000 points fairly quickly in this and actually finish the game, which I argue is a better category, but yeah. So we're going to be doing that through 2 different methodologies that we have for killing enemies. Number one is the regular, shoot lasers. That's the first thing you would do when you start the game, is press the A button to shoot lasers. The other is going to be charge shots. And there are 2 different types of charge shots. They are locked and unlocked. So unlocked are typically called CUS or CUS. Locked are just called charge shots. So what the deal is with these is, if you damage any enemy with splash damage, essentially it will give you an extra point, and you can close to double the amount of points that you get in a stage just based off of doing this. And there are some glitches and exploits that you can do, unfortunately not in this run, but yeah. And you can see this game's fairly quick. We're already at the first boss. So this guy right here, you just line yourself up in the stage before the boss fight, shoot out his legs, shoot out his back, super quick. It's one of those quick kills that looks really impressive, but is actually really, really easy to do. So yeah. So you might see in the splits there's a bunch of numbers, and those basically denote A, how many points we want to have at the end of that stage, and B, how many points we want to have total by the end of that stage. So for example, Medio, the next stage, we want to get 390 points in that level, and we want to have 615 points overall. Corneria actually is one of the hardest stages in the run, which hence why I didn't actually meet the score goal that I had here. And these are things that are basically pretty variable throughout the run. So you see here, okay, I'm minus 9 points, so I can go in the next level, slow down slightly and get an extra 10 points or something like that. And there's a stage that's basically like a reset point for that, so this is actually fairly marathon safe, if that is a worry. So Medio here is going to be, I believe it's the second longest stage in the run in terms of actual playtime. In terms of a split, it's not, but that's just because there are some cutscenes that are very, very long. Yeah, during the marathon, this is a good time for donations. So Medio, there's a lot of very little going on, especially in the first half of the stage. For about the next minute after what's going on here, there's very, very little going on. Little known thing here, and this is a really weird thing, is you see how I'm getting those hit plus ones? So there's actually a hitbox for those meteors that is hidden below the stage. It's like really weird, but you can just barely hit it with a charge shot if you shoot it in the right spot. There are some other exploits like that throughout the game. In Solar, there are these little lava spires that go up over the lava floor. And if you shoot a charge shot in the middle of them, again, they have a hitbox, you can hit that. Just an example of how we can actually use unlocked charge shots to get some extra points quite easily. And of course, there are some enemies, such as those right there, that have like shields, which make them pseudo-invulnerable. And you could just repeatedly hit those guys for hit pluses. Unfortunately, we're trying to go fast, so we can't really do that. So you do miss out on a fair number of points. Like, for example, my PB for this is like, I think it's like 470 something. I don't actually remember off the top of my head. I think, yeah, I'm not actually sure if I mentioned, but the race slash co-op that I'm submitting this with is Rakanai. And his overall score is like quite a bit higher than mine. So I think his is close to 500, his best for this stage. But in terms of a race slash co-op, it's a decent mix because I'm better at speed, he's better at score. And in that stage that's quote-unquote a reset, it's essentially time equals points. So I might get ahead before then, but he might need less points so he can go through it faster. There's, honestly, in terms of score tech, there's not really a lot to explain in the first half of this stage. But right here, while Slippy's getting followed, I mentioned those enemies that were pseudo-invulnerable. So right here, I'm shooting them with unlocked charge shots, and getting a ton of points off of them. I think I ended up getting like 15 there or something like that, which is, that's actually very, very good. This section right here is called the warp. So you end up spinning in circles very, very fast. There's a photosensitivity warning here, just as a heads up. And you actually get 4 groups of 8 enemies, and you get a hit plus 7 by shooting them all with a charge shot. So you get 60 points by just going through that warp section. So we got about 120 before the checkpoint. So that's half just in there. So you can see, like, oh, yeah, you had 120 at the check. How the hell are you going to have 390 by the end of the level? This is how. So this warp right here, there are just so many points. I think this is, like, I think it's about, like, the second highest point density in the game. If you need more bombs there, like, there's a ton of, like, random upgrades in here. Unfortunately, if you're playing expert mode, which actually is not one of our donation incentives this time, it's honestly too difficult to do this run with. Like, at least reasonably. But if you're playing this on expert mode, you get almost no upgrades in here, and yeah, it's really, really difficult to get out with like a reasonable number of items. But we're trying to use bombs fairly conservatively and shoot all the things that are like quite individual. The thing with bombs is that you can't actually get hit pluses, so they act basically like lasers, but with a very wide area of attack. But in this very last section, you can shoot bombs and get bombs at the same time, which is incredibly convenient. And right here, I think I ended up finishing, this is pre-recorded, but yeah, I ended up finishing with 399. So I'm exactly on track with where I need to be with being -9 on the last stage and +9 on this one. So yeah. After this is Katina. So this is, as I said, a little bit of a reset point for points. It is quite early in the run. It's on stage 3 out of, well, it's basically 6, but technically 7. And yeah, so you can get a bunch of extra points here for marathon safety. Like, for example, if I wanted to be very safe, I could grind out an extra 30 points on this level, no problem. It would take maybe like 15 to 20 seconds, depending on general luck. There is actually a skip that we can do in this level. However, that would be a very risky move. I'm not sure if we would want to show this off in the marathon. There's this mothership that just spawned in the corner, and it has 4 hatches on the underside of it. However, they don't actually reveal themselves until after the cutscene, and then they pop up and down periodically throughout the stage based on the number of kills that you get. However, they still have a hitbox on the underside. So you can actually carefully place bombs on the underside and loop through the ship, and there's actually no hitbox on the top, so you can shoot bombs in through the top of the ship. and end up killing all 4 of these hatches. And when that happens, you spawn the mothership core, which once you kill that is the trigger for ending the stage. So this cutscene right here is almost 30 seconds. You skip that. You skip grinding out points. You skip however long it would take you to actually kill the hatches and the core after the cutscene. Because once the core's out, the cutscene won't actually spawn. But yeah. So this is a very large dogfight. Again, this would be in the marathon. Very good time for donations. Most of the times for donations are either in cutscenes or in stage 2 and 3, Medio and Katina. And yeah, it's a very large dogfight. You can see at this point how time equals points, because yeah, the more time you spend here, the more enemies will spawn, and the more things you can kill. In my PB, I ended up actually getting a lot of really lucky points. Anything that's a hit +2 is quite lucky. If you see a hit +1, that's not super out of the ordinary, but hit +2 is, like, yeah, quite uncommon. So you see I'm killing Falco here, which is a bit of a weird move. So the reason for this is, actually, it's a very strange thing. So in every level, you end up getting, you have a score threshold that you have to meet in order to get the main collectible in the run, which is score medal. In order to get that, you have to kill, like, you have to keep all of your wingmates alive as well as get that score threshold. So in the last 2 stages, we did actually end up getting that, and that costs about 4 seconds for each cutscene that you see. So I am supposed to let Falco die in stage 1, however I was low on points, so I didn't have a convenient time to do it. And if you kill anyone in Medio, it reduces the number of points you get drastically. So in terms of, like, you know, trying to save the run versus save time, I chose the run, even though it was immediately at the start. But yeah, if you kill a wingmate, they don't respawn for 2 stages, and that means you skip 2 medal cutscenes. Additionally, if we're gonna kill someone, it basically has to be Falco. In the next stage, it's imperative that Peppy remains alive, and it's nice if Slippy remains alive. And we'll get into that once that stage starts. But as you can see here, the core is gone. We ended up, again, being -9 on this stage. I don't know what it was with my PB and the number 9, but apparently it quite liked it. Even though I thought that was supposed to be unlucky, but maybe I'm mixing it up with 3, I'm not sure. But yeah, cutscene. Good time for donations. That's the benefit of this run, is there's a lot of time for donations, but it's not like a drag. Like, it doesn't drag on and on and on or anything like that. Like, you're pretty actively playing the game at a top level throughout the whole thing. It's just there's cutscenes. And screaming. The new mod we made of the game, by the way, does modify Bill's dialogue. I believe he says, "I'm glad we're on the same team, Fox," which is just, like, wholesome Bill. I love it. That could be a potential thing, too. I'm not really sure. I think that's too complicated to do for a donation incentive, is, like, have wholesome versus angry characters or something. So Sector X here, in speedruns and, like, you know, 100% speedruns, just like regular blue line, this is the hardest, well, sorry, this is usually the easiest stage. However, this, for score, the start is incredibly difficult here. So that, those groups, that group right at the start where I got like a 3, a 5, that's very, very hard to do. I came up with a strat that actually gives a consistent +7, but it loses a couple seconds, so I kind of opted to not do that. Yeah, having like over 100 points at this point in the stage is incredibly good, and sets you up really well for the second half. So the first area is rapid fire, and then you get this section where it kind of dies down for a little bit. And then in the second half, it goes back to rapid fire again. The whole point of this stage is it's supposed to essentially be like a destroyed base. Getting that gold ring there is very important too. If you're going to die on any stage, it's probably going to be this one. So Peppy there is getting chased. If Peppy is dead, he doesn't get chased, and those enemies don't spawn. So you can see how important it is, because you would just lose 5 enemies, which typically you can get a hit plus 4 for, so 9 points overall. But wait, there's more. You'll see in a little bit. But yeah, so this stage, one of the funny things about it is these platforms here that all these enemies are on are paper thin, and they just disintegrate when you touch them. Accidental loop, that loses about 3 seconds every time you do that. It's very easy to do. But if you look at these platforms here, I believe, yeah, it just went right through one of them. And I'm actually surprised that usually you end up going through multiple of those. But yeah, this stage, second half is very difficult just because there's so much going on so quickly. And if you get out of rhythm, like, it's very difficult. Oh, hey, look, Peppy's getting chased. How many enemies was that? 10. So you lose the 9 from before, plus you lose 10 enemies there, and you can get up to, like, I would say like 18 from that if you do it perfectly. So 27 points. That butterfly doesn't spawn if Slippy's dead, so that's why it's nice to have Slippy there. So it gives 4. There's also, this boss fight's a bit unique where there's enemies just kind of sitting in the background. The boss of the next stage, Macbeth, if you go through a certain route, will have similar, but not exactly the same. Like, that one, again, is time equals points, but we don't go that route because that route is very slow. So this boss right here, just shoot his eyes. It's easy. So that is the one cycle for that. If you miss that one cycle, that's about 17 seconds lost. There's a strat that you can basically shoot him 1 or 2 times. He'll do a faster attack cycle, and then you'll lose about 6 seconds instead. But yeah, the whole thing with that boss, actually, is if you take too long, Slippy will come after him with a screaming vengeance, being the merciless warrior that he is, and gets immediately swatted down to Titania. So if you take too long on that boss, you do have to go to Titania. That makes the run hard and slow. I don't think I could get 2,000 points if that happened. But I've literally never had that happen because that boss fight is so easy. And you have to take like a solid like minute and a half for that to happen. Sorry, casuals. I hope I didn't insult you on that one. So the next stage is Macbeth. This stage is very difficult because you're actually using a completely different vehicle. This is the Landmaster, and this is a tank. It does not have tank controls, thank God. And your lasers are replaced with like this pea shooter turret thing. So that's a thing that's not necessarily great. The one thing that's good though is the area of effect for that is much larger than for the R-Wing. Like, I don't know if you're noticing like the size of the explosion there, but yeah, you get a much wider radius of effect with that than you do for the R-Wing. So right there, you saw that I was bonking on the pillar, and you're like, oh, that's probably slow. But the good thing is you end up getting a lot of points that way. This stage, I try and get 230. That's very difficult. Also, Peppy will come down there with a screaming vengeance looking for that guy. That right there was a trick that I just ended up failing. It's very difficult. Basically, if you barrel roll when the nose of the Landmaster is like directly on the ground, you can get like a charge shot that basically just detonates immediately in front of you, which you can use to get enemies that are like right there that you don't want to lock onto. So those turrets, that turret that I was trying to hit there, it's actually worth 5 if you shoot it with a charge shot, well, indirectly. And it's worth 1 if you shoot it directly. We don't know why. Also, I'm trying to get onto the tracks here. It's very difficult to do, but if you do, Slippy will spawn and get 2 enemies behind him, which is good because, you know, damage on Slippy. I mean, who doesn't love to kill Slippy? And also because, you know, an extra 3 points off that. Falco gets chased there as well. We're like, I don't know, it's like super simple to save him. Right here, this area is very laggy, but there's a bunch of rocks that will spawn. If you go too fast, you actually won't spawn a few of them. And I thought I actually didn't detonate that bomb correctly, but I guess I did. I'm not sure how. If you detonate the bomb against the wall, you'll end up shooting out the last sections of the train. Also, you can go along the side here. And on normal mode, you don't take a lot of damage from those pillars, but it does actually save a pretty substantial amount of time to do that instead of hovering over them. When you hover in the Landmaster, it uses your boost gauge. The fastest way of boosting in the Landmaster is to do about 1/4 your boost gauge, just because like it goes down very quickly but goes up very slowly. Somebody did the frame timing. I'm not exactly sure who, but yeah, if you hover, it uses your entire boost gauge very quickly, and you can't boost for a couple seconds. You end up losing a fair amount of time based off of that. So here, there's 2 different exits to this stage. There's the exit from shooting all 8 of these switches, which will cause the train to basically crash into the supply depot. And there's the way of just killing the boss regularly. So we're going to go for the 8 switches. You get a hit plus 50 for doing this, which will give us 135. We will be... I don't know, we're over. At this point, I've lost track in my head of what exactly we're at. During the marathon run, we would have notes for how many we would need for each stage and, you know, what the total should be. We'll be paying attention. Yeah, so we hit the switcher there. You get this epic cutscene, which is very long and a good time for donations, where the train will crash into the supply depot. The alternative is to kill the boss. Now, as I mentioned, like the boss for this is kind of time equals points. You can get upwards of like 350, close to 400 points on this if you grind it out to the very end. However, I was commentating a marathon run for a score run, and I literally had time to go to the corner store, buy a drink, and come back in the time that, like, that actually played out. And I came back at, like, the perfect timing. So, yeah, like, it takes a very long time, basically. And it's very boring to watch as well. Which, honestly, that's personally why I prefer runs like these over speed runs. Sorry, over score runs. Speed runs with score instead of score runs is because score runs you'll end up grinding things out, and for a while it's a bit of a drag. Yeah, so I'm plus 8 here. The next stage is Area 6. You'll notice that the score threshold on my splits is much, much higher than every other level. Area 6 is basically a massive slaughter fest for killing as many random enemies and ships and stuff like that as you can. It's basically like Andross's main defense force for Venom. And there's a bunch of circles in there. They are pissed. So, yeah, we're looking for 490 on this. I can get as low as 482. 490 really isn't that difficult. So this is where we have a lot of extra tolerance for getting extra points. Like, for example, if I were to loop there I would get about 20 extra points. Like, all I have to do is loop and throw an extra bomb, and then you get a lot of extras. But, yeah. This stage kind of speaks for itself. You're shooting all these ships. You're trying to get charge shots on all these groups of enemies. If you end up losing your lasers at any point, which that can happen from either losing your wings, which on normal mode you have to crash into something 3 times on that side of your wing, or you would lose a life at some point. So say I had 0 bombs coming into the stage. Honestly, I would take a death immediately so that I have the bombs for that minefield. Then there's a lot of laser upgrades that you can get. Even in the second half, if you end up taking a death at some point, like, there's a trick to get, like, I think it's 4 laser upgrades, like, immediately. So right here, I'm not really sure why I'm sticking back that much, because, like, the thing with this run is you kind of have to understand what's worth slowing down for and what's not. So sometimes you'll see runners for this, they'll, like, slam on the brakes for, like, 2 points, versus, like, you can get an extra 3 here by just, like, tapping them, or an extra 4, like what I would have gotten on that ship if I tapped the brakes. Yeah, so, like, there I did slam on the brakes, but that was to get an extra 8. So you gotta remember that, oh, you know, Area 6 exists, so you can get a bunch of extra. And my PB for this stage is, like, I think it's 660 something. So getting 490 is really easy and really consistent for, like, top runners such as Rakanai and myself. Rakanai is the current world record holder of this category at 33 minutes flat. The minute-and-a-half difference between his PB and mine, honestly, like, it's just down to time equals points on Katina. That's really all it is. So, honestly, like, if I take slightly riskier strats and get more points on this stage, then it balances out overall. So see, like, I am hitting the brakes at some point, but I'm not, like, constantly holding them or anything like that. And, like, I'm pretty easily able to get 490 here. Like, to me, it's apparent that I'll get it by, like, quite a large margin. Like, I'm gonna probably purposely miss some stuff here. Because the boss for this gives 11 as well. And you can get a hit plus 7. I guess I shot that a little early, but you can get a hit plus 8 off of that supply box. And yeah, there's, like, I literally just boosted past, like, 35 points there. So, it's absolutely no problem. And I ended up with 510, which is more than I even needed. So being quite conservative with the point estimates here is definitely a good thing. So this boss is incredibly difficult. Not to survive, but to do well. So there's 3 phases, essentially. So the first phase, you'll end up with this boss being open, and you have to shoot out the energy balls. And then it will close up, and you have to shoot the tentacles. So the energy balls are the easy part. The tentacles are very difficult. So once the boss becomes vulnerable, you have about 5 seconds to shoot out all these tentacles. They move completely randomly, and sometimes the boss can just put the hitbox behind itself, so you can just never hit it. So it is a little bit of RNG and a little bit of skill. Right there, I ended up with a really bad pattern, and it made it very, very difficult to hit the boss. I actually did find a new strat since my PB on this boss, and it saves about 4 seconds, I believe. And that's honestly mostly in lag, which, like, it may not be apparent, but this boss is very laggy. Also, major photosensitivity warning coming up, by the way. There's a magical rainbow laser, and it's a walking photosensitivity nightmare. This happened during my SGDQ 2019 run as well. Nightmare is probably not the right word. As long as you tell people to look away from the screen, it's not a big deal. But see, like, if you aren't photosensitive, if you look at the screen right now, like, wow, it's a lot. And you can't really avoid that. Like, so, last phase here, we're going to shoot the energy balls with a bomb. That timing is surprisingly tight. It's only a few frames that you have. There's not really much of a queue. And then once you kill those 3 energy balls, you just shoot the boss out and it dies. So I think I did lose, compared to my PB, a fair amount of time on this stage just because I slowed down for some extra points, which I didn't need to do. But yeah, that's, again, it's not a big deal. So the last stage is Venom. So Venom consists of 2 parts. This isn't so much of a score stage, but it's pretty much just a speed run. So the first part of this is a boss fight with Starwolf, who is like the enemy rival team to Star Fox. Oh, that's right. I lost a bunch of time on this because I hadn't cleared the stage, and I forgot about that. So Starwolf here, that was an accidental U-turn, but you can try and shoot them immediately. They're only vulnerable to lasers, and honestly, you just want to kill them as fast as you can. So Wolf will always try and trail you, who I think is who's left here. You'll be able to tell when they die, but based on how they're flying, I think so. Yeah. So each of the other Starwolf members are going to try and go after one of your wingmates. So Leon will go after Falco, Pigma will go after Peppy, Andrew will go after Slippy. Surprisingly, because of that, Leon is the least aggressive AI because they want the player to think that Falco's a better pilot. So if we're low on points, we can actually kill everyone but Leon and kill Falco, and then we let Leon follow us around. We can bank charge shots off the ground and hold the brakes while he's following us, and he'll basically run right into the charge shots. So, final area here, this is the Venom Tunnel. There's like 30 different routes that you can take through here. The fastest route is to go right then left. We have a bunch of backup routes if we need a bomb or if we need lasers that are only a couple seconds slower. But going right and then left gives you a nice extra life that a lot of people don't actually know is in the game because there's only like 3 that you can get in the game. So Andross 1 is pretty trivial. You actually spend more time not looking at him than you do looking at him. Like, you're in first person looking away to reduce lag for more time. And then Andross 2. And by the way, this whole Andross fight, including the tunnel, that's what the 2-player 1 controller would be. Is all of this. So Andross 2 looks a little trivial. It's not. So he flies in a completely random direction here, but what you want to do is loop, throw a bomb, shoot out the eyes. If you shoot him, he'll teleport behind you, and then loop back around and shoot him. If you shoot him, he will teleport behind you thing. That's the thing that trips up a lot of people. And it actually makes the boss fight really difficult if you get out of a rhythm. But as I said, he can fly in a really random direction. I had a marathon run a few days ago that he just charged me. Like, he came right at me, and by the time that I was done my U-turn, he ran into me. And I was playing on expert mode, and I lost my wings because of that and took a ton of damage. I almost died, so yeah. And this is the final part of the run. Once you get control here, you have about 45 seconds left in the run. So it's a good time for like closing remarks and shoutouts and that, so you don't have to do that after the run and waste a bunch of time or anything like that. So yeah, this is a pretty trivial section. You're basically just boosting. Your dad goes in a random path here. James is your dad, by the way, and he's the ghost dad because he's dead. He goes in a random path, and sometimes he'll try and juke you. If you go the wrong way, you die. It's actually faster to retry course than it is to like die naturally because the lag brings it down to quite literally about 4 frames a second. That's time as soon as you exit the tunnel, by the way. as you can see on the timer. But, yep. To summarize, Star Fox 64 2K%. This is both a co-op and a race submission with Rakanai. The goal is to get 2,000 points. We have donation incentives for 2-player 1 controller for the final boss, kill Slippy, which we could both do during the run and as a separate thing afterwards, and Scream Fox, which is this. Thank you very much.